So to introduce kind of a sector problem, so usually when a customer approaches us for this sort of work, they either want to move away from project-driven construction or they have no idea they're doing it, basically. So some of you are probably thinking, what is project-driven construction? So I've put together a really basic scenario here, so it's simplified a bit, but I think hopefully it's easy to understand. So usually with a project, you're going to start off with some architecture for a building. You're then going to move into design for construction. So this is a phase where you need to turn that architecture into something that is real, basically. So we're talking about adding rebar, structural elements, detailing of architectural things, and really bringing this thing to life. And this process can take a long time. There's a lot of learning there, a lot of work, basically. And then once we know how this thing is going to be built and what we want to build it from, we then need to account for the equipment, the crews, who we're going to use, when we're going to use it, is that available at the time we need it, all of that sort of detailing. And then at the end, once we've done that, we then build the building. So you take this with a bit of pinch of salt because obviously some of these things can happen in parallel. But yeah, so, and the big thing with this for project-driven construction is through that process we've just gone through, we're really focusing on the site at the end. So this is us solving all the problems for just this site. And then you've completed the job. Hopefully you've done awesome work and you can pat yourself on the back. And then we get another job and we go through all of those lessons and challenges again. And then we go to another job and repeat the process again. If you're lucky, you'll get some same people from previous jobs who have the experience. But from what I've seen in the past 4 or 5 years is these people typically either will not be on your project, they've been moved to another project, or they've left the business to move somewhere else, or they've even retired. There's a real problem here with know-how of how that's captured. So how do we solve that? So the thing we've been pushing is a kind of revolution, I guess, in the sector is product-driven construction. So if rather than considering those same 3 sites as individual projects, if we look across all 3 of those buildings, we can start to identify some repeat products and modules across the whole site. So what do I mean by that? We're looking for products or processes that are happening hundreds or thousands of times again and again and again. So once we've identified that, whatever it is, we can start to do some product development in R&D to basically either optimize an existing solution for a product, or we might even develop our own as a business. We might say, we can do that better. Let's try build something ourselves. And then once we've done that, we can add that to a library, and then all that know-how around that product, all those issues are captured, but we don't stop there. So using Delmia, we can start to do some on-site DFMA and installation, where we basically want to assess how this thing is going to be installed on site, what it looks like, where the worker safety issues are, what equipment are you going to use. We get to really granular detail around the real installation process of this thing, and all digitally before you've had to invest loads of money, which is good. And same thing, we capture that know-how into a library. So this is stored in your business again. And then if you have sufficient volume, you might also be considering making this thing yourselves, or how can you improve the prefab process in a factory. So then we basically go through that same iteration again of how can we improve the resources, how do we lay out the facility, what does it look like, really optimize that, and again, capture all that information in your business. And then together now, we have a library of product data, on-site install data, and off-site fabrication data. So now we have this kind of unified library with loads of information in your business, which is awesome. But then how do you use that library? So now we've built it, we've identified something, let's take it into the world. So you might have multiple site opportunities. So this could be 4 or 5 projects or more, or even just one massive project where you've identified you can deploy this product to your site, or these opportunities. So once we've identified that, we then need to do what's called configured product design, where we will take this standard product and we will tweak it and adjust it to fit the customer's requirements. So usually there's going to be some specific architectural requirements or specifics with the project, where a wall needs to be a certain length, a certain height, an MEP unit needs certain things in it which you can configure. If you're doing something really clever here, you might even do some parametric design. If you don't know what that is, I definitely won't have time to cover it in this session, but I'd recommend you go to the CATIA AEC channel on YouTube, and Jonathan Usher has some great videos there on configured products, so check it out if you've not seen it already. So we don't stop there. So then we're going to do some site simulations. So this might be for specific restrictions on a site. So it might be you have a really tight loading area. It might be there's a specific really tricky bit, or even a common thing for us is how do we actually flow the build up of this product through the site? If you have two wings of a building, do you put two crews working parallel, or do you have one crew working back on themselves? So that sort of high level sequencing we can simulate and optimize. And similarly, you might do same sort of stuff for the factory, which I'll kind of cover later as well. And then you build the building based off all of this configured product data, all of the great prefab stuff, and your simulations which have taken out the risks for site. So again, we don't stop there. So on site, I guarantee it, especially if this is the first time you're deploying that product, this will be, unfortunately, the worst time you will ever deploy it, because you'll probably find more issues on site. You'll find optimizations on site where someone in your crew has figured out a really good little jig they can use to make something better. So what we're trying to do is not just do this and then stop, but continue iterating our product and continue improving it and feeding that back all the way into our original library. So we're constantly getting better as a business. So the first time will be the worst, second time will be much better, and by the fifth and sixth time, or as you're going through, this product's accounted for every single possible issue, configuration, resource requirement, and you just have all that information now in you as a business. So that's a lot to take in. What do I mean by products? So if you're not that familiar with construction, hopefully everyone on the call is. What do I mean by a product, and what could that be? So there's kind of 5 typical examples of that in the field, or 5 different categories I've bunched into. The first being structural, which could be columns, walls, stairs, things like that. The next will be architectural, which is things like dry lining or gypsum walling, or architectural elements. The third is MEP, which is racks and risers, which the picture on the bottom left gives an example of that, of the services running through the building, so chunking that together. Fourth being volumetric modules, such as bathroom pods or larger structures like the bottom right picture, which we're seeing more and more in the market now. And the fifth one is actually a combination of different things. So, for example, I've categorized as a separate piece because you might have a architectural wall which has some integrated MEP in it. So now this is actually accounting for multiple systems in that product. Or you might have a external structural wall which has the glazing and the windows and the doors pre-built into it. So now that's taken into account some architectural elements in the structural component. So yeah, again, when you're trying to identify these, we're looking for products or processes that happen hundreds or thousands of times in the field, because that's going to give you the biggest opportunity for waste removal in your process.